What's up, guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2002 Infiniti G20. Up front is a 2.0-liter inline-4, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this G20 for several reasons. First of all, I always love driving Infinitis from this era, and G20s are kind of hard to find, and we'll talk about why that is a little bit later on. But the second reason is the fact that this has over 250,000 miles. It is a well-broken-in, well-seasoned automobile, and I'm excited to share it with you today. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackprequel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 2.0-liter inline-4 under the hood, better known to enthusiasts as the SR20 DE. So we got the SR20 here in the United States in a couple of vehicles like this and the Sentra, but only ever in their non-turbo variants. It's a very solid, very reliable engine, and it makes decent power. It makes the driving experience pretty fun. I can only imagine what this would be like with a manual transmission. It must be a hoot and a half. The SR20 was very famous over in Japan. They turboed them and put them into S chassis. The Nissan Pulsar GTI-R had a turbo SR, and so it's a very stout, very reliable engine. We just sadly only got the little bit more boring version. Like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic. It's doing its job for now. These are somewhat problematic transmissions. The torque converter feels like it's about to give up, and I'm sure it will somewhat soon. However, at 250,000 miles, I guess you can't really knock it too hard. Last but not least, the G20 is front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive the Infiniti G20? Well, like I said, it's a very buzzy, very fun experience. The engine likes to get beat on. That's kind of the joy of 4 cylinders. You probably didn't hear much or honestly see much, but there's life there. There's spunk there. It's just maybe hidden behind the scenes a little bit. Visibility is good, and I really overall like the size of the G20. However, we'll talk about why that was problematic a little bit later on. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is the fuel and speedometer, and off to the right is the tachometer and coolant temperature. On the steering wheel, we do have our cruise control on and off, but that's literally it. And off to the left, we do have a climate control vent, power mirrors, and gauge dimmer switch. And moving out of the door, we have the latch to get in and out, power locks, and power windows. Moving into the center, we do get 2 climate control vents, hazard switch, and rear defrost. And then our climate controls. This is very, very Japanese for obvious reasons, but this does feel very 90s Nissan JDM sort of things, but we got it here in the United States. Then we do have an aftermarket radio, and down below, we do have a 12-volt outlet as well as a factory cup holder, so we will do a big friggin' bottle test, and unfortunately, yet very predictably, it fails not only in width, but height as well. Then we get the shifter surrounded by a wood accent. Nothing really too crazy here. And then we have the parking brake and heated seats. Heated seats, a pretty nice option here for 2002. Then we do get the center console and the seats. The seats, as I mentioned, are heated. They are power as well, so Infiniti kind of flexing that luxury muscle with power and heated seats for the G20, and they are relatively comfortable. You do sit up a little bit high, so if you like your seats super low, the G20 isn't very kind to that, but it's still a comfortable experience. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, we're in the back of the 2002 Infiniti G20, and a couple of things to note. First of all, it's not the most spacious back seat I've ever been in. My knees are hitting the seat in front of me. My head's coming close to the ceiling. However, this was a smaller car. This is only about 2,700 pounds, and so again, compared to its German competitors, this was a lot smaller, so you see that here in the back seat. However, it is manageable. I'm 5'11", not a small guy, and I actually do fit back here somewhat, so could I do an hour back here? Sure. Would I want to drive across the country back here? Maybe not, but at the end of the day, It does have a back seat. It is a 4-door. It works, and that's what I'm looking for. I do also want to note that this does have a black interior, which was kind of a rare option for the G20. Most of them had this like beige interior, so nice to see the black interior today. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Infiniti G20, we do have a key here. And pop it up like that. And you do get a decent sized trunk for the size of car. But again, smaller car, smaller trunk, smaller things around the back. We don't get any crazy amenities, no crazy features back here. Just a nice little trunk around the back of the Infiniti G20. Those birds are really loud today. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I really like the look of the G20. I think it's very handsome. I think it's very well understated and has that luxury-ish appeal without being broad and in your face. I will say the headlights are not factory. Those are actually Japanese domestic market headlights from the Nissan version of this car. So they are glass, they are dual beam, as opposed to the original G20 headlights would have just been a single beam. But overall, the rest of it is pretty stock, and I like the look of it. Every time I see a G20, I always light up, so that's no different here. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the Infiniti G20? Well, at my fingertips and toe tips, this has been a good experience. I like the way that it drives. I like the way that it looks. It's been a positive experience. However, let's talk about why this car was A, a failure, and B, you don't see them much on the road anymore. Well, why you don't see them on the road anymore is one simple answer. Rust. Up at the front, there's a support beam that holds the radiator in the car. They all rust out, they drop the radiator, and while it might not be a super complicated fix, it can be a pretty pricey fix because you basically have to construct a new load-bearing beam up at the front of the vehicle. So most shops just don't want to do it. They gave these to the junkyards and called it a day. So that killed most of the G20s that you'll see. And this particular G20 had that happen. However, the owner actually welded a piece of rebar to it to hold the radiator in place. Also, those transmissions, like I said, can sometimes be faulty, so if your radiator's falling out and your transmission's slipping, odds are you weren't going to invest more money into the car. Now, why didn't these sell all that well back in the early 2000s? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, Infiniti was still a lesser-known brand. They only started producing cars in 1989, so when this car debuted in 99, they were 10 years old. They still didn't have that big brand recognition that other luxury brands had, like BMW, like Mercedes, like Audi at the time. But bringing those names up, the other reason is that this didn't sell well because it was kind of underpowered and not as luxurious as luxury buyers might have wanted. Take, for instance, the BMW 3 Series from the same era. This was kind of a crossover time, so we'll use the E36 instead of the E46. But comparing this to the E36 had a 6-cylinder. The E36 was rear-wheel drive. The E36 had a more sporty chassis comparatively to this. This was a front-wheel drive 4-banger. That just doesn't really scream luxury to any potential buyers. And so a lot of people overlooked this and went with the German counterpart. Now, the funny thing is that Infiniti took this to heart. And when the next generation Infiniti G came out in 2003, it blew everyone's hair back. They listened. They made it rear-wheel drive. They gave it a 6-cylinder up front. And they produced, in my humble opinion, Infiniti's best ever product. The Infiniti G35 and G37 were absolutely fan-flippin-tastic. And now, looking at this car and looking at that car, you ask one simple question. Infiniti, who hurt you? And the answer is BMW, Mercedes, and Audi. That's who hurt Infiniti. And so Infiniti internalized it. They took the notes that people were giving them and they said, okay, you want a 6-cylinder, you want rear-wheel drive, you want a big old manual, you want good torque, you want good features, here you go. And so we might not have gotten the amazing G35 and G37 without this car, the G20. This car had to exist in order for those to be created. And while they feel completely different, you can see that this was a stepping stone towards that end result. And as I mentioned, the end result that I think was Infiniti's best product. But here we are today, an Infiniti G20 with 250,000 miles and an NA SR up front. The sun is out, I'm in rural Michigan, and life ain't too bad. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Owen for letting me borrow his G20 for today's video, one of the very few still remaining on the road. Owen has been absolutely wonderful to work with, and he's keeping this car on the road, which many others have failed to do, so I respect the crap out of him for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.